There's a Hey, there we are. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I had to switch from Safari to Chrome. Sorry about that. Pain in my ass. Hey, Striper Man, I see you on there. Let me know if you can hear me. I was all set up to go. Yeah, okay, cool. I was all set up with Safari, and it didn't work. I don't know why. This this live thing is more of a pain in the ass than maybe it's worth. So what's going on, guys? Happy Saturday. Happy fall. Good to be back. I know I took a long time off of putting up some videos, but obviously it was pretty hard at work this summer with the project and also just, enjoying the summer. I got a whole bunch of stuff that I want to talk to you guys about. I got a pretty good list here, but if anyone wants to fire away with a question first, by all means, go ahead and ask. Yes, no. I'm worried that we got, in trying to get that to work, I had like 3 or 4 other live events going, and I'm looking at the viewer count, and I'm worried that everyone's over there on the other ones, which are not working. So yeah, I don't know. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to dive right in here, and I'm going to start this off by talking about a couple of things on my list. Specifically, I want to talk about Solarization, because that was a major part about my project that I did not necessarily do a great job in discussing or making videos about. I did produce one video about the Solarization. I think it was titled "Covering Your Lawn in Plastic" or something like that. But basically, the theory behind the Solarization project was, and this is by no means my theory. I researched this and learned about this. Actually, let me back up for a second. This was recommended to me by a viewer. I had never heard of this before, Solarization. It was recommended to me by a viewer, and I went and researched it. Turns out it was, a real thing, and a bunch of people do it successfully. So I figured I'd try it. The theory is that if you can cover your soil with a clear plastic during the 2 hottest months of the year, July and August, the theory is that you can capture enough of the sun's radiation to raise the soil temperature to a certain temperature for a certain duration of time that will actually prove to be lethal to seeds in the soil. It will actually sterilize the seeds, both good and bad, everything. And all of the research that I did showed, there was different numbers that they were talking about, but I saw such things as like 140 degrees for 30 days, or 140 degrees for 60 days, varying different bits of information, and varying bits of results. So I figured I'd try it. I got myself some clear plastic. When I made that video, a bunch of people asked, well, why wouldn't you use black plastic? Well, I think the black plastic itself absorbs more of the sun's radiation, but the clear plastic allows the sun's radiation to penetrate through it and get trapped down and build and hold heat in the soil. Because again, the objective is not to heat the plastic. The objective is to heat the soil. So that's why everything that you read says to use the clear plastic. I was able to go to one of my industrial suppliers at work, and I think I went with I either went with a 2 or a 4 mil. I don't remember off the top of my head. I will post some follow-up information to this, because I should know, because it worked really well. I guess the thickness that I chose was perfect. It was too thick and it's just too expensive. You're wasting your money. And too thin and it's going to rip. Well, it didn't rip at all. So I feel like I probably got the right thickness. I ordered sheets that were 20 by 100, and I used 3 of them. So each one covered 2,000 square feet. So I had 6,000 square feet of my turf covered with this clear plastic. Now, this is after all of the heavy glyphosate in the spring and all of the the leftover matter, the grass, the stoolings, any of the upper thatch type of stuff at this point is gone, and we're down to bare soil, and we cover it with this plastic. And from what I read, you were supposed to seal the sides of the plastic to really create like a canopy or a greenhouse style effect. I did not do that. Probably should have. In real world testing, and I think you see this on that video, on the hottest day that I could find, in maybe it was late July or whatnot, and it had to be close to 100 degrees. It was 1 p.m. and I was out there with a meat thermometer in full sun. I do not have a soil thermometer, so I grabbed a meat thermometer and I stuck it in, and I want to say, 2 to 4 inches down, I had temperatures of about like 100 and I think 120 was the highest that I saw. I never got anywhere near 140 degrees. And quite frankly, unless you're in, Arizona, I don't think you're getting any hotter than the weather that we had. I read about guys online who basically said, yeah, I attempted the solarization and the weather just didn't cooperate. It was cloudy, it was cool, and that makes sense. The weather cooperated for me. It was a hot summer. July and August were very hot. It gave me the weather that I needed. And still, I only got that soil temp up to about 120 degrees. I was thinking it would be more. I mean, if the air temp is damn near almost 100, I thought for sure I could get the soil temp up higher. But nonetheless, that's what it was. And I left that plastic on for the better part of July and August. I want to say I had that plastic covering for a solid 10 weeks. So I feel like I definitely had the time. Would I have gotten higher soil temperatures if I sealed the sides of the plastic to really trap everything in there? Probably. In terms of the results, did it work? Yes, I think it did. I think, if I could give you the conclusion that I came to based purely on my experience, I want to say that possibly certain seeds were controlled and certain seeds were not. So, for example, I can guarantee you that nutsedge was not controlled. Now, maybe that's because nutsedge has, I think, if I'm saying this correct, has the nuts that are below your soil, deep below your soil, and therefore they're not the nutsedge is not germinating from seeds that are up on top of the soil, so it's not going to control that. The reason I'm saying this is because the nutsedge was so prolific that I had tremendous nutsedge growth underneath the plastic. It was actually lifting the plastic up and kind of ruining the situation. And in fact, I had to, when I pulled the plastic off, I had to glyphosate out the nutsedge. It was so bad. So I can tell you from personal experience that the solarization did not do anything to the nutsedge. Let me back up for a quick second. Why did I do this solarization? If we go back to the spring with the Poa trivialis, admittedly, I made a cardinal mistake of letting the Poa trivialis go to seed. I can't even believe I'm saying that out loud. It makes me look really, really stupid, but it's the truth. At one point, the triv was tall, and I think I was kind of letting it grow in anticipation of glyphosating everything. The more surface area you have for the glyphosate to absorb on the leaves, the better the plant is growing. I just figured it would be better. And ultimately, the Poa trivialis went to seed in certain areas. And that was like probably the biggest mistake I made on the whole project. So now I've got Poa trivialis seeds in the soil. And that's when I figured, hey, let me try the solarization thing. So did it work to sterilize Poa trivialis seeds that were on top of the soil? I can't guarantee that, but I want to say maybe yes, because today is Saturday, September 14th. I seeded on August 31st. I have tremendous germination and growth with the turf grass that I planted, and I don't have any triv that's germinating from seed where the plastic was. And this was a big question that everybody was asking in that video that I put up a couple days ago. Hey, did the triv come back? And yes and no. Here's what I can tell you. I have triv that germinated from seeds in areas that were not covered with the plastic, and in areas of extreme moisture in the soil, specifically down towards the street where the storm sewer is. I've got a little bit of triv germinating right around there, and it's extremely obvious because it's a different color than the turf grass, but it's also extremely obvious because the turf grass seems to germinate in a single sprout, whereas the triv germinates and immediately like splits off and starts producing its leaves. But here's the great news. I'm not seeing any triv germinating where the plastic was. So was the solarization effective for the triv? Very possibly. I hope so. One thing that I did when I pulled all of that plastic up, and I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, but I knew that when I was going to pull the plastic up, I knew I wanted to hit another round of glyphosate before seeding. And there's different information on how long you need to wait after glyphosating. It was a very, very light glyphosate. It was just a spot treatment. Again, there was some nutsedge I wanted to take out. So I think I gave myself 2 or 3 weeks. So I pulled the plastic up, and I remember specifically getting down on my hands and knees with some hand tools and digging in the top layer of the soils, looking specifically for the trivialis stulens. I wanted to know, are there viable stulens left in this soil? Because if so, that's going to destroy everything. That's going to ruin the project. And so I'm literally down there on my hands and knees digging, looking for trivialis stulens, and I can tell you, I didn't see any at all. I think that my spring glyphosate, assault was pretty damn effective, pretty nuclear. So here's what I can tell you. Today's Saturday, September 14th. I don't see any triv germinating where the plastic was. I feel I almost don't even want to say that because I don't want to jinx the effort. It seems like everything's going pretty good right now. Would I do that solarization again? That's a tough one to answer. I guess it's probably going to ultimately long-term depend on the results. If we're talking about this a year from now and I'm telling you that I could definitively say, hey, I think that solarization worked really, really well, then yeah, I'd probably do it again. And of course the opposite's true. But here's what I can tell you. That was a tough row to hoe, man. I had 6,000 square feet of plastic on my front lawn throughout July and August. My house looked terrible. I mean, it looked terrible. I was embarrassed. My neighbors were like, what the hell are you doing here, Mike? That was a tough one. I think that was a little extreme. I think everyone that I talked to told me that was a little bit extreme. So I guess we'll see if it works. If I could do it all over again, I would probably do maybe smaller patches with plastic, and I think I would definitely seal the sides, where you basically kind of dig a little trench, bury that plastic in the side, and cover it up with soil, really trying to trap that heat under there. I can tell you, as the thunderstorms came throughout the summer and the wind would blow, it would get right underneath the plastic and try to lift it up. I held the plastic down with landscape stakes and rocks and stumps and anything else that I could find. So that's pretty much the solarization. And the other thing is there were certain weeds that germinated right after I took the plastic off. So hey, lawn creeps, what's up, brother? I had some major technical difficulties. I was telling everyone when I started off on Safari, and I had to switch over to Chrome to make this work. I'm looking at the view count and concerned that a bunch of people are still on still have another stream open or another window or video open. So I apologize about that. This live thing is possibly more of a pain in the ass than I figured. But yeah, so when I took that, we've been talking about solarization, covering the lawn with the plastic, and when I took the that plastic off, I did get a certain type of weed germinating. So again, I think that what the ultimate conclusion is that you're gonna have certain certain seeds, whether it be weed or desirable turf grasses, certain seeds that will be killed at a certain temperature, and then certain seeds that need a higher temperature. So a higher temperature to be sterilized. So therefore, some of them got sterilized and some of them didn't. That's pretty much that. Let me see if I can just read through some questions here real quick. Do you have a picture or video of the current state of your lawn? Asks Mike. Yeah, I posted video last night and on maybe Wednesday. That showed the lawn at, I think, the 10 and the 13-day mark. So the lawn was seeded on August 31st. And today's Saturday, September 14th. It's 14 days old right now. So if you just go back and check those videos, you can see where the lawn is right now. My only concern about the solarization was what might have done to some of the microbiome. Otherwise, it's true. A genius. Well, certainly not my genius, because I didn't come up with it. It was recommended to me, and then I researched it and read about it. So if you go and research this solarization, supposedly it's very good for the microbiology. That's the first thing I thought was like, I've spent so many years with Milorganite, and then now I'm on the Ocean Grow kick, and so many years putting organics into the soil. I've done compost. I've got, earthworms everywhere. And we all know how beneficial that is for the soil. And then I'm sitting here saying, wow, what's going to be the negative effect of the solarization? If you research that, you'll see that supposedly it improves the soil's microbiology. I don't know exactly how or why. I don't want to pretend that I do. But I encourage you guys to go read about that, because I thought it was very interesting that everybody, all of the universities that have done studies on the solarization all say that it's actually beneficial. I can tell you this as well, from like a physical perspective. There were areas of the turf that I didn't solarize. So if you think about it, these areas of the turf, the grass, let's say like July 1st, the grass is long gone. All of the matter, the thatch, the dead grass, the dead stolons, all the matter is all gone. We're looking at bare dirt. Come back 60 days later, all of July and all in August, that bare dirt, it looks like a baseball field. It's hard, it's compacted, the sun has been beating down on it. Man, that's not the greatest seed bed right there. You got a bunch of work to do to bring that back to a seed bed for planting. On the contrary, the areas that were underneath the plastic, when you pull the plastic off, they retained moisture, because there's still a tremendous amount of moisture under the soil. The rain still kind of seeps its way underneath that plastic because it wasn't sealed. So I pulled that plastic off, and the soil was black. It was rich. It was pliable. It looked fantastic. It didn't need that much work to make that into a seed bed. So I got to tell you, if I had to take like a piece of my lawn and like put it on hold, right, for 60 days throughout the summer, for whatever reason, I'd cover it in plastic again, for sure. I can tell you it was a lot more fun to work with the areas that were under that plastic than it was to work with the areas that were left out open to the sun. I wonder what the guy you had from Jonathan Green would have thought of it. Striper Man, the Rich, I believe may have had some health issues, and I don't know exactly what's going on with that right now. I wish him the best of luck. He was a great guy. I don't know what's going on with Rich right now. Obviously, prayers for him. If by any chance he's doing well and watching, of course, Rich, open invite to come back anytime, be on the show, walk the lawn, check it out. All right, let's see. What other questions? We had one up here. I live in South Jersey. Was wondering what's safe to use on established zoysia lawn to rid some weeds and prevent. I'm going to be real honest with you. I don't know much about zoysia grass. I mean, I know what it is. A buddy of mine has zoysia in his lawn. I'm not a zoysia expert, so I don't want to recommend something that I don't know. Prevent any new weeds over winter months. I'd honestly just do some quick research, read some labels, and see what's rated for zoysia. All right, let's see. I do have a bunch of other topics here, so until we get some more questions, I'm going to dive into the next one. Okay, so This is something, cultural practices. I mentioned this on like the teaser video the other night, and I think this may have been my biggest like aha moment. And when you think about it, it's it makes perfect sense, and maybe it's pretty stupid that I didn't think of it earlier. But so I will admit that I was so quick to just um, turn to the chemicals, right? Um, which I don't regret, because there was no other options in terms of getting rid of the triv. So the triv got way out of control. So I'm in way over my head at this point. I don't have any other options. You got to get the glyphosate out and take this triv out, and I did. Um, but so yeah, so we have a tendency to always look for the easy route, right? That's what we do. What's the quickest, easy way I can fix this? So maybe we turn to chemicals. But if you take a step back let's have a conversation about cultural practices. So I was staring at one of my security cameras at my house looks out over the front of the lawn, has like a perfect shot of the whole front lawn. And I was just staring at it one day, a picture that was taken like in early April. And it dawned, and it's this picture. And oh, by the way, I'm gonna go back and carve up the live stream and cut out clips and produce a couple of short shows that are like real specific. So this one right here will be about cultural practices. So there'll be B-roll and pictures overlaid on this, right, as I'm talking right now. But basically, this picture, it was a perfect representation of where the triv was and where the triv wasn't. And as a lot of you guys remember, I didn't kill the front of my lawn or the center of my lawn because there was no triv. So I'm looking at this, and I can see exactly where the triv was and exactly where the triv wasn't. And then it just made absolute perfect sense. The triv was in the areas where the soil retained moisture. If you look at triv's, Poa trivialis's root structure, it does not have a root structure that grows deep. It has a root structure that stays in the top of the soil and propagates with its stolons growing horizontally. So that lends itself to it needing high soil moisture to survive. Keep in mind, that's why it goes dormant in the hot summer months. So I'm looking at my lawn and I'm going, I'm an idiot. The trivialis is where there's shade. The trivialis is where there's water. So from a cultural perspective, if we want to keep this from coming back, we need to eliminate these things that allow it to thrive. The reason why there was no trivialis in that center portion of my lawn is that center portion, one, didn't get the shade from the side, so it's full sun. And two, it's a septic field with a high sand content, so it has tremendous drainage. So the soil doesn't stay wet, so the trivialis couldn't thrive. So from the cultural perspective, you guys know that I took out like 11 or 12 trees from the front of my lawn, meaning I got to get the shade out of here, right? So I took the trees out, but then the real big aha moment was when I was looking at my gutter downspouts. When they built my house, like a lot of houses, they took the gutters and then they ran, I don't know if they're called leaders, right? They ran the pipes underground. So they come down from my house, they go underneath the sidewalk, they go underground, maybe like, 18 inches underground, and they discharge into the lawn, which they just left them open, these gutters, and they would clog, and it was a terrible design anyway. But nonetheless, it was just pushing water out into these areas of the lawn, and it was keeping the lawn way too moist all the time. So that aha moment was, I'm going to move these gutter downspouts. And I did. I completely took them out and I rerouted those gutters. One gutter I was able to send down the driveway, and one gutter I was kind of able to send down along the garage where there's no basement foundation to worry about. So ultimately, I am working to dry out my soil. I want to be in full control of my soil's moisture, meaning if it's dry, I want to water it. But I can't have this situation where I have these damp, shady areas where that trivialis is going to thrive. And that is right there. That's the definition of cultural practices, where you've got to start looking a little bit deeper into what exactly is going on here. My backyard is loaded with Poa trivialis. I did not kill it yet because I couldn't do two projects at once. I have heavy shade in my backyard. And, I'm going to need a pretty serious plan if I think I'm going to take that triv out. That triv is just thriving back there. I would need to get some serious tree removal done before I attempted to renovate and reseed that area, because again, you could plant all the fescue or the bluegrass you want. If you have damp, shady soil, the triv's going to thrive, and nothing else will. So that's the cultural practices part of my speech. That was a big aha moment for me, and I encourage you guys to take a second, slow down with the chemicals. And this is coming from a guy who was pretty quick to go to the chemicals and be heavy-handed. Slow down for a second and take a look at exactly what's going on. I'm gonna go back to the comment section here. Did you use, Lou? Hey, Lou, what's up, brother? Did you use Tenacity for, I think he's trying to say pre-emergent. No, I've never used Tenacity. I know that Tenacity is ineffective on Poa trivialis. I know it kind of turns it white, stunts its growth, maybe. I think a lot of people use it to identify the triv, because if you spray the Tenacity out there, it'll temporarily turn the triv lighter color, so it helps you to identify it. I think it's unnecessary. I've never used it before. Have you heard wood chips for a basic base to start growing? Jeremy Edwards, have you heard about wood chips for a basic way to start growing grass? No, I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing there. I don't know. Greg, been in the 90s down here in Tennessee. How long should I wait to overseed tall fescue? Admittedly, I'm a Northeast guy. I don't have great advice for the Southeast. I can tell you, if you want to talk, that's like a good segue into talking about timing of when to seed. If you go back on my channel a couple of years ago and look at some of the videos I did on when to seed grass, in my specific case, I didn't have irrigation. I didn't have the ability to irrigate. So I was seeding in late September, and I was recommending seeding in late September if you don't have irrigation. So if you get your grass to germinate and it gets hot and dry and you don't have water for it, it's not going to make it. Those little grass plants have no root structure. They're not going to make it in the hot weather. They're going to die. So if you have no irrigation, I used to preach waiting 3rd, 4th week of September, maybe even 1st week of October, simply because the temperatures are down, and you're getting a lot of dew in the morning as well. So if you can't irrigate, you're kind of managing the risk there. It's not nearly as hot, not nearly as dry. You're managing the risk of your new grass plants dying off. I seeded on August 31st because I can irrigate now. We drilled a new well at the house. I have the water. I was able to set up a makeshift irrigation system, and therefore I said, okay, I'm going early. I'm going on August 31st because I'm gonna be able to water this. And in hindsight, it worked out fantastic. I think that let's use that as a segue into what were the germination results of my grass. Planting on August 31st, having warm air temperatures in the 80s, which of course is still very warm soil temperatures. I had germination in 4 days. So if your goal is to get your lawn as established as quickly as possible and looking as good as quickly as possible, of course, we all know Halloween is the big dance. That's when we want our lawn looking its best. Well, naturally, you want to try to start early. I actually had a guy comment saying that he overseeded in like early August. That's a little early in my book, but if that worked out and you had the irrigation, God bless you. I went with August 31st. I was extremely pleased with the results. Germination up in 4 days. And it really just kind of shows you how important the timing really is. I think it kind of actually shows you ultimately that grass isn't rocket science. If you just do things right, you're going to have great results. So I can tell you that if you're going to germinate if you're going to plant in the spring, if you're going to plant in April, man, you're going to be waiting 2-3 weeks for germination. The soil temp is cold. The opposite of that is planting or overseeding at the optimum time. And getting amazing results and, being really pleased with it. So I think that was kind of a long-winded way of saying, do you have irrigation? Let that kind of be a big determining factor on when you seed. Good morning, Mike. I need your help on doing some fall pre-emergent. Now you're talking about not using chemicals. What do I do? No, I'm not talking at all about, we were having a conversation about cultural practices and solarization. I haven't yet gone the route of being able to say I don't put any chemicals down on the lawn. I think that I remember when Rich Imlay from the Jonathan Green Company was here that day, and it might even be on that video where Rich actually said, and I'll never forget this. He actually said, you're trying to do something that's extremely unnatural, meaning that these beautiful stands of turf grass as our front lawns is extremely unnatural in nature. That doesn't exist. What exists in nature is what you see on the side of the road, right? So you drive down the side of the road and you see weeds that are like 4 feet tall. That's natural. That's what nature wants to do on its own. The idea of having this picture perfect golf course front lawn with this beautiful turf grass mowed at 4 inches, deep emerald green, and not a single weed in sight, it's unnatural. So to think that you're going to, do that 100% organically might be a little bit of a pipe dream. So I'm not saying that I am anti-chemical at all. If you want to put down a fall pre-emergent, I'm assuming you might be trying to stop the maybe the Poa annua cycle. Go for it. I did it 1 year and had really great results with that. Of course, it means you can't overseed this fall, but if that's what your specific situation calls for or your schedule calls for, I think that's a great idea. I can't believe nobody's asked me what grass seed I went with yet. I'm gonna wait until somebody asks that. My watering schedule that I've currently set up right now is I still don't have a true irrigation system, like a professional underground, zones and timers. I don't have that. I'm still like old school with the hoses and the sprinklers out there. But I was able to go to Home Depot and pick up one of those like 4-zone hose faucet timer devices, which I got to tell you works really, really well. So I'll try to get a clip, or not a clip, a link to where you guys can find the one that I use, because I'm really pleased with how well it's working. So I was able to set up 3 zones of automatic watering, and I'm watering twice a day. I went with 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. For 20 minutes on each zone. And and that's been going steady since day one, and I'll probably going to let that go steady for 3 weeks. It's 8:43, which means they should be running right now as we speak. You really just kind of got to keep an eye on it. The objective with the seed is just to keep it wet, a little bit wet. You don't want so much water going down that you actually, move your seed around or flood your seed out. I went with the 8 a.m. because you kind of take advantage of the fact that you got dew on the grass, put a little more water down before that sun comes up. And then I kind of went with the 2 p.m. Thinking that, that's right about the time where your seeds, if they're going to start drying out, they're drying out. So the 2 p.m. kind of soaks it down a little bit again. I thought about the third cycle, didn't do the third time cycle per day, stuck with 2, had amazing germination results. So that's watering. Hey, Vandy 250. What seed and why didn't you go all blue? So I'm assuming you mean why didn't I go with all Kentucky bluegrass? Great question. I seeded with Jonathan Green Black Beauty Ultra, and at the 14-day mark, I'm extremely impressed. I cannot give you a long-term review. It's the first time I've ever used Black Beauty Ultra. I have used Black Beauty before. Black Beauty is only tall fescue. I have used their perennial rye. It's the first time I've ever used their Ultra. It is their quote-unquote flagship turf grass. They claim that they sell that mixture to sod growers across the U.S., especially in New Jersey. They claim it to be a sod quality grass. I did save a picture of the label. I have, and here's a quick tip for you. Take a picture of the label of the grass that you choose, because the label should have a lot number on it. So the lot number is kind of like the serial number for that bag of grass. So if you have a problem where the grass doesn't grow, or you think there was a ton of weed seed in there, or if you have any type of problem at all and you want to call the manufacturer, I guarantee you the first thing they're going to ask is, do you have the label? Do you have the lot number? Because that lot number tells them when did they, harvest the seed? When did they bag it? Where did they bag it? What was in it? And, like everything else, I'm sure if it's anything like my business, they probably have some notes in their system about that lot number, right? Yeah, Chairman 78 saying I used Black Beauty Ultra last year and had amazing results. So I'm not going to give you a 12-month review on Ultra. I'm not going to give you a 24-month review on the Ultra because I don't know. I can give you a 14-day review on the Ultra. And I can tell you why I didn't plant 100% Kentucky Bluegrass. So the 14-day review is the 14-day review after planting on August 31st and doing everything right is I'm super pleased with the germination and I'm super pleased with the color. So again, I had germination in 4 days. I have to make the assumption that that was the perennial ryegrass. Real quick, the Black Beauty Ultra, 70% tall fescue. That's 3 different types. Galliconda, Toltec, Tonto tall fescue. 20% frontier perennial ryegrass and 10% Kentucky bluegrass. So I can only make the assumption that the 4-day germination is the perennial ryegrass. And now keep in mind, so 20% perennial ryegrass. So if you think about that, you look down at your soil and 1 in every 5 seeds is perennial rye. Okay, well, I got a lot more than that came up in about 7 days. So I'm going to go ahead and say I had the tall fescue germinating in 7 days. And last night I was out there looking at it at the 13-day mark. And so, keep in mind, as of right now, I've got grass that's like 3 inches tall, right? At the 13-day mark, I got down real low and I have more germination happening right now. So tiny, tiny little grass plants are germinating. So I asked myself, I said, maybe that's the bluegrass right there. I think bluegrass germination, maybe average 3 weeks, right? 21 days. So is it viable to think or plausible to think that I had or I'm having Kentucky bluegrass germinating in about 14 days in optimal perfect conditions? Maybe. Maybe. Why didn't I plant all Kentucky bluegrass, the absolute like king of grass? Probably because I'm impatient. I think that with certain types of Kentucky bluegrass, you could very possibly go, 3-4 weeks before you see germination. I think if you're trying to get your lawn established as quick as possible, you're trying to have a perfect lawn by Halloween. You might want to, think about going with something a little bit faster, that germinates a little bit faster. Of course, species diversity and variety in the turf grass. That's why they, Jonathan Green made this mix. By all means, at a previous house, I had a previous home with a real small little front yard, real small, and I seeded 100% Kentucky bluegrass, and I waited 3 to 4 weeks for it to germinate. But a year later, it was, in terms of turf grass, the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It was absolute perfection. So if you got the patience, if you got the time, by all means, go with the Kentucky bluegrass. Rob, hi from Morris County. What's up, brother? I'm in Monmouth County. Lou, I've been overseeding Black Beauty Ultra for the last 2 seasons. Every year, it's getting better. I got a small plant pot that I germinated on the deck. Great looking grass. Yeah. I hope I say the same thing a year from now. I can tell you the color is fantastic. The color of the Black Beauty Ultra is absolutely fantastic. Listen, the reason why that Jonathan Green makes this blend, is that their tall fescue is going to be the durable part of it. Hopefully drought resistant, fungus resistant, insect resistant. They claim that the roots can grow up to 4 feet deep. And we all know tall fescue can take a beating. However, it doesn't spread laterally. It's a little bit clumpy. So that's why they're going to throw in that 10% Kentucky bluegrass. Not necessarily for the color or the look, because you only get 10%, but because that bluegrass, if you can get it established, is going to spread with its rhizome system, which will help to fill patches. I personally think the perennial ryegrass is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's one of the best looking colors out there in terms of its dark emerald green color. This one is the frontier perennial ryegrass, which is what I did on an overseed 3 or 4 years ago. I planted the frontier perennial ryegrass, and it was absolutely gorgeous. That's kind of another segue into one of my topics about seed washout. So we had a really good thunderstorm come in at like a 3-day mark and washed out a bunch of the seed up at the front by my sidewalk. So if you think about that, if you're going with 100% Kentucky bluegrass, and if your seed's buried pretty good, you're probably going to be okay. But if you have some seed that's up higher in the soil and you get washout, that's you kind of got to, I don't want to say start over, but you got to put some more seed down, right? So think about it. You're putting down your Kentucky bluegrass. Now you're waiting 3 to 4 weeks for that to germinate. And I guess you're kind of saying, you're hoping that in that 3 to 4 weeks, nothing happens. No washout from thunderstorms. In my case, I've got birds all over the place pecking at the seeds. I've got a problem with wild turkey. The turkeys are pecking things up. On the contrary, planted perennial rye, you get germination in 4 days. So you're just moving quicker, right? You're basically saying, okay, I'm going to get germination in 4 days. So can I go 4 days without getting a crazy heavy thunderstorm? Can I go 4 days, without, the birds or the turkeys or whatever? Rob, when is your opinion on when to dethatch? Fall, in the spring? Well, I don't dethatch. I aerate. I don't rent the dethatcher. I don't know if you've ever used that thing before, but that is a pain in the ass, that machine to push around. I think it's unnecessary. I would highly, highly recommend aerating, Rob. If you aerate and if you open up that soil, the microbes will manage the thatch for you. It's a win-win on a lot of fronts. You aerate, improve soil activity, improve the microbes. It'll decrease the thatch. You're giving yourself a seed bed and an opening to overseed if you want. You're letting oxygen in. You're letting water in. I'd aerate, and aerate heavy in the fall, not in the spring. Hopefully you can put pre-emergent down in the spring. You can do an aerate and overseed in the fall. Skip the dethatch. And that's a pretty good segue into how did I seed? Did I use the slit seeder or the aerator? Mike Morris says I was planning on doing both. Hey, by all means, I think it's unnecessary, but whatever you want to do is cool. There's also an argument for just spending as much time out in your lawn as possible. So I think that's fine as well. But I aerated. I did not rent the slit seeder. The slit seeder and the dethatcher is the same machine. It's the machine that has the tines that come around, and in a dethatch type scenario, those tines rip the thatch out. In a overseed scenario where maybe you have less grass or even bare soil, the tines are kind of making a slit into the soil, and then there's the seed bucket is attached onto the front, and the seed bucket's just driven off of the front wheels. So you kind of make a little slit, drops the seed in, you get great seed to soil contact. That machine is a royal pain in the ass to push around. I know, I've done it before. I wouldn't do it again. If your yard is dead flat, maybe. I've got some pretty good pitch on mine, and let me tell you something. Pushing the dethatcher or the slit seeder up a hill is no fun. On the contrary, the core aerator kind of drives itself. Don't get me wrong, the core aerator is still going to kick your ass if you use it all day. You'll have a hell of a workout and be pretty sore the next day. But the core aerator does really just drive itself, which is great. I use the core aerator. I didn't rent the slit seeder, and if you watch some of my previous videos, or anyone online who knows what they're talking about, they're going to tell you when you rent the core aerator, get your money's worth, make 2 passes, 90 degrees to each other. So do your lawn vertical, come back, do your lawn horizontal, and you're pulling twice as many plugs. Keep in mind, I had a lot of bare soil when I was getting ready to do this project on August 31st. So I did rent the core aerator. However, I don't really think I aerated. I think I rototilled. I didn't make 2 passes with that core aerator. I think I made about 100 passes with the core aerator. I really got my money's worth on that rental. When I was done, my lawn looked like it was rototilled. And my seed bed was just fantastic. And I basically rototilled, a light rototilling. I spread the seed, with a spreader. And then I took a large plastic leaf rake, turned it upside down, and slowly dragged it all over the lawn. And that process is really, at that point, what promotes the seed to soil contact. So that rake is pushing the seed down into the lawn, into the soil, and kind of stirring it up and covering it up a little bit. And I mean, that's it right there. Aerate, spread the seed. Don't forget to pull that rake around upside down. And that's really all you need. And I think it's a lot easier than renting that slit seeder or that dethatcher. Oh, let's look at the questions. I did not aerate this year because I was taking triv from shady areas and transplanting them in areas. Oh, Dave Dean, thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. That's on my list. I wrote it down as, how did I write? Right. I wrote down on my notes right here, aerate, wash, repeat. Okay. So we spoke about that, and some other people spoke about that in the spring, which is the aerator, if you have trivialis, right? Is the aerator picking up stoolins and dispersing them throughout the yard, thus making your problem 10 times worse? Very possibly. What I did to manage risk, even though I don't think I had any viable stoolins left, what I did was, again, back to that overhead picture of my lawn where I had the triv and I had the plastic laid out. I kind of carved the lawn out into, I think it was 5 sections. And I knew I had these 5 sections, and maybe I had 3 or 4 of those sections had the trivialis, and some were worse than others. And I knew where the gutter problems were. I knew where I also have this storm sewer problem down by the street. There's triv around that because of the water. I aerated each section and then stopped, took the aerator far away from the front lawn onto the driveway and power washed it. So basically what I was saying is, I'm not going to be responsible for potentially moving any stoolins or seed from one zone to the next zone. I may move them around within the zone if they're even there. I don't think they were, but I'm not going to move them around. So let's just say, different case scenario. You rent the aerator. You've got triv in your back because there's shade, and you don't have triv in the front, but you want to aerate everything. You want to get your money's worth. Fine. Go in the back, aerate the heck out of the lawn, bring the aerator to some area where you won't get, wash out onto the lawn, power wash it. Power wash the seeds out, power wash the stoolins out. On one of my earlier videos, like 2 years ago, I say that. You go, when you rent this aerator, so I rent my aerator from Home Depot, you bring that aerator back to your house. The first thing I do is power wash it, because I guarantee you get that aerator off your truck or off your trailer, go look at what are they called? I don't know what they're called. The tines. They're full of soil. They're full of soil from the previous guy's lawn. And so whatever was in his lawn is in those tines. Good seed, bad seed, weed seed, stoolins, I don't know. First thing you got to do before you start using someone else's tool is power wash the heck out of it. And use that technique to potentially not move stuff around. Lawn creeps. My cat ran out of the house and up a tree. Morning family drama. I'm back. What did I miss? All types of good stuff, man. What's your herbicide plan, and how do you prevent Poet trivialis? Sorry if you've addressed. So I said this at the beginning. I want to say it again. I'm going to. You'll see it on the channel. But my plan is to take the live stream, pull it back down, carve it up into short clips, as short as I could possibly make them. Overlay B-roll video and pictures, give it a good how-to title, and that way some of this information will be searchable on there. How do I prevent Poet trivialis going forward? I would prevent Poet trivialis with cultural practices. Take the shade, take the moisture, take the water out of your lawn. Did you say that you use Jonathan Green Black Beauty? I know you're a proponent of Jonathan Green, myself as well. Love everything they offer. Innovators of Yep, Jonathan Green Black Beauty Ultra. 70% turf type tall fescue, 20% perennial ryegrass, and 10% Kentucky bluegrass. I'm also interested in the prevention and elimination of all POA. Currently, I pick them by hand. Mike Morris, excellent idea. I will do that. So, okay, Rob, you're interested in the prevention and elimination of all POA. Currently, I pick them by hand. Okay, so that's the segue into me talking about what's my plan going forward? I think in order to address the plan going forward, I think we have to talk about what went wrong in the past. And I think that one of the main things that went wrong in the past is that, very simply, I let the problem get out of control. And I think that is applicable, whether it be for your lawn, your turf grass, or your own personal health or relationships, whatever. You can't let stuff get out of control. And that's where I made an enormous mistake. I learned a lot from it, and one of my main objectives is that I can share that with everybody, share what I've learned the hard way. I can't believe I'm actually saying this now, because I feel like this has come so far. I'm actually have come through it already. I know it's not over completely, but we've made such tremendous progress. I remember when the triv first came in, it was just small patches. It was just a couple of small patches here and there. And in the fall and the spring, I've said this a million times, those patches stick out like a sore thumb. You can see them a mile away. They're bright green. They have a terrible texture. The Poa trivialis has a terrible texture. You can see it a mile away. It's really easy to identify it. Glyphosate it immediately. Okay? Glyphosate it immediately. I think that I didn't do that. I didn't do that for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't necessarily know what that was. Two, it's hard to take glyphosate to your lawn. It's hard to kill your lawn off. If, you know, for all these guys, you know, for watching this stream, you guys love turf grass as much as I do, and you take a lot of pride in the way the front of your house looks, and you're going to just kill it. It's hard to do. But I can tell you that you have to, because you have to get ahead of it and control it early. Think about it like this. Next spring, I guarantee you, I see some patches of Poa trivialis. I guarantee you, there's no way that I have 100% success rate. Okay, I think those are really fair expectations. So, my plan, I'm fully prepared for this. My plan is in April, early April, I'm going to see some small patches of Poa trivialis, and I'm going to glyphosate them immediately, and that's going to kill them. And then I'm going to do some small little overseeds. I've got plenty of seed left over. I'm going to do some small little overseeds in probably mid-May. So you're going to glyphosate out some small problems in April, and you're going to overseed in mid-May. You know, my biggest mistake was letting the problem get out of hand. And once it got out of hand, it was an enormous situation where I had no choice but to do the massive glyphosate death kill in the spring, take extreme measures such as solarization and leaving the lawn, you know, look like hell all summer long, and then coming back with a massive renovation and a full overseed, a very resource intensive project, you know, time and money, you know, in the fall. So my advice is, don't let things get out of control, and don't be afraid to do a little bit of glyphosating. You know, grass grows really quickly. You know, it's not going to grow as quick in the spring, but still, grass grows really quickly. So don't be afraid to kill off what's bad. If you want to try digging it out first instead of glyphosating it, by all means, give it a shot. You know, word to the wise, Poa trivialis spreads with stolons. So if you're going to dig it out and you've got a little spot of bright green Poa trivialis, you got to dig a bigger radius, because it's got stolons that have spread out into your turf grass. Dave Dean, I had no idea I had Triv until I watched your channel. Thanks for the content. My pleasure. Lou, does Poa annua spread by stolons or rhizomes? I am not sure if my bluegrass in the backyard is filling in or if Poa has spread. You know, to be honest with you, I don't know. Good question. Does Poa annua have stolons or rhizomes? I don't know the answer to that question. I know it's a very prolific spreader via seed. That's its main reproductive technique. Like Morris, wow, that had to be rough. It was rough. It was terrible. Vandy, so if you overseed, your calendar is changing. This year you went with pre-emergent rather than Malorian. Is that your plan? We went with Milo in April, then pre-emergent in May. Yeah, so, well, good point, Vandy. On a large scale basis, you can't seed if you put pre-emergent down. However, let's just say I decide to stick with the plan and put my pre-emergents down, prevent some crabgrass. Let's say you have a small patch of triv, you glyphosate it out, you wait a couple weeks, you dig/rake it out. If you want to overseed, just disturb the soil level, the soil layer. So pre-emergent is a chemical barrier that's sitting on top of the soil. You can purposely disturb it. So take a rake and scarify it up and move it, flip it over, dig it, and you've ultimately, at that point, you've broken the barrier, and the pre-emergent is useless. Seed as normal. So that's that. So I've seen on the comment screen here a couple of times the Milorganite mentioned. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about Milorganite, nothing at all. If you're in Jersey or maybe, I don't know, maybe New York or Eastern PA, I can tell you I switched to Ocean Grow. I've said that previously. I put down what I did this year. I was trying to lessen the actual amount of work I needed to do on seeding day. So if you think about seeding day, right? Aerating, spreading seed, spreading starter fertilizer, spreading an organic slow release fertilizer, raking it in, setting up the watering. It's a lot of work, tremendous amount of work in one day. So purely in the interest of lessening the workload for one day, I spread Ocean Grow a week before, maybe even 10 days before I seeded. So, like that third week in August, I think. And then my thinking was, first of all, as you may or may not know, the slow release organic fertilizers like Milorganite and Ocean Grow break down with heat and friction, not water. They're not water soluble. So getting it down and letting it sit there and get that hot sun for 10 days is a good way to start letting it break down and go to work. And then if you think about it, I was going to come in and core aerate over the top of it. So that's going to break it up and actually push it into the soil, top, maybe 2 or 3 inches. So I spread my Ocean Grow down very heavily. I definitely went heavy with the Ocean Grow. Ocean Grow is less expensive than Milorganite, which is nice. If you go to Ocean Grow's website, they'll list all their dealers, and you can just call the dealers up and verify stock before you go. If they don't have it, tell them you want to order a bunch of bags and they'll get it for you. And my plan is going to be to do another app of Ocean Grow, probably, I wanted to say October 1st. It might be the second week in October, just purely based on how the grass is growing. And if I'll have mowed by then, if I've mowed once or twice. But I'm super pleased with the Ocean Grow. I put the Ocean Grow down on my back lawn, which got no renovation, no aerating. I spread the Ocean Grow and visible results in a week. It's a great product. I highly recommend it. I did put down a starter fertilizer. I don't think you need to get crazy with your starter fert in terms of like any specific brand name or any necessarily expensive starter fertilizer. Go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Tractor Supply, your local nursery, whatever. Grab a bag of starter fertilizer, spread it down. It's synthetic by design. It needs to release quickly. Don't overthink it, but just get it down. Let's see. When am I going to mow? I wrote that down here on my list of stuff to talk about. It's either the third or the fourth week, very possibly the fourth week. That's just something you need to keep an eye on. As you get to that third or fourth week, mowing your new grass the first time is going to stimulate it, which is important because you need to stimulate it to grow. You need to tell that grass plant, hey, the objective here is to be 3 to 4 inches tall and properly mowed, not to grow wild on the side of the road. So it is important to do that. However, of course, you don't want to damage it. So I know in my case, I wouldn't dare run, my big 0-turn mower over it until late October. A lot of work to mow 10,000 square feet with a 21-inch push mower, but it's what you got to do because you got to be gentle with it. All right, I'm getting ready to wrap up here. We've been on for over an hour. It looks like. Any more questions? What is Ocean Grow derived from? Biosolids, same as Milorganite. So Milorganite is the biosolid from the Milwaukee sewage treatment plant, I think. And Ocean Grow is the exact same thing from Ocean County, New Jersey. Lawn Creeps, where are you from? Why do I think you're in New York, right? So it's the Ocean County sewage treatment facility. I've been there. I visited it. I've toured it. So it is essentially the exact same product, more or less, as Milorganite. I want to say it's either 550 or 500. It's organic, it's slow release, and I believe it has 2.5% calcium and 2.5% iron. The calcium will work to raise the pH of your soil. The iron will turn your grass beautiful, dark emerald green with a hint of blue. Yeah, that's fantastic stuff. If you're in Jersey, check out Ocean Grow. It's less expensive than Milorganite. What else? What else before I get off of here? Washout. When will I mow? Yeah, I mean, I had washout in one area from a really bad thunderstorm up on top of my sidewalk, and I lost a lot of seed from it. So I just overseeded again, just by hand, threw out a bunch of seed. And it's already germinated. So no big deal there. All right, guys, I'm out of topics on my list. I've been rambling for an hour. I don't think I missed any questions. If there's no more questions, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy the coffee. And hold on. Looks like I got one more question. Chicago. Okay, I was wrong about New York. A biosolids actually go to the RSS brand version of the Marganite. Yeah, there's another one too. There's I think either Rhode Island or New Hampshire, one of the New England states has Bay State, Bay Shore, Bay State. Is Rhode Island the Bay State? I don't know. There's another one of those biosolid organic fertilizers coming from these sewage treatment plants. Not sure if they should be called Mass. He says, Joseph Brown says Massachusetts. That's probably correct. Massachusetts is Bay State. Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it. I don't know if these guys actually call this stuff organic. I don't know if they're allowed to call it organic. I would assume you definitely are going to have trace materials and elements in these biosolids. So I can tell you, I do not use it on my garden. But I have no problem putting it out onto my lawn. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Mike, you're a good dude. I like how you're doing your own thing. Keep it up. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been getting a bunch of comments lately about, the other stuff that's so hot on YouTube right now with, from some of our friends, from Pete, with the, what is it? The X start and the Carbon X and this and that. And I got to tell you, I got a bunch of comments on, hey, Mike, why don't you use that stuff? And why aren't you doing anything with that? I have nothing bad to say about any of that stuff because I've never used it and I know nothing about it. All I can do is tell you what I use. I do have a tendency to lean towards using more local stuff, and I'm in Jersey, not North Carolina, so that's what I'm using. And yeah, I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll see what the results speak for themselves. All right, I got to run. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. Best of luck with all of your lawns.